Billy, believe it or not, hockey is finally around the corner, and we are about to enter training camp, which means that it's finally time to take a look at our predictions for the 23-24 NHL season. But before we do, we need to welcome our special guest, the host of Healthy Scratch Red Wings Report, Buschy. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, boys. Should be fun doing this.
I'm pretty excited. Now there might be some folks that have already seen your stuff. Believe it or not, I've looked at our YouTube analytics. We do have a percentage of shared viewership. So some people will be happy to see your face. Some have no idea who you are. So that's where we're gonna connect those dots right now. Give us maybe a little bit about you, a little bit of how you're feeling about where the Red Wings are at, maybe your feelings on their draft, their free agency, whatever was interesting to you, whatever you liked.
Yeah, I feel very good. I don't know if you've seen some of the videos. One that I went a little crazy with Alex DeBrincat. I think everybody probably felt the same way. Probably inside the inner child came out. But yeah, I've been a Wings fan all my life. And obviously, with the YouTube channel, it's fun to just talk hockey, right? So to have two other Red Wings fans sitting with me now to have this debate will be a lot of fun. We'll see if we have any similarities, probably some differences. But I'm looking forward to see what you guys think about where the Wings are too, because I have my thoughts. You might agree or disagree. It's the whole fun of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why we're all here.
As for the offseason, their draft, how'd you feel about them using Yzerman using all of the picks in round 1 and 2? I feel like a lot of people expected those moves to get made, maybe some picks to get moved around.
I was included in that for sure. Like, I really thought, okay, we have 2 picks. I thought it was going to be with the DeBrincat trade. That was something at the beginning of that round, even that day. I was really going, you know what? I think that second pick, they're probably going to move that one, not the 9th overall, but they'll move that second one. And when they didn't, I was a little disappointed with draft picks. And I've said this to a lot of people, all my buddies, we talk about the draft and I go, nobody knows. Like even the experts, nobody knows. So I can't be, mad about Nate Danielson or Axel Sandin Pellikka. Like, I just hope that these guys pan out and that they're studs, like every other pick. I hope Philip Zadina was going to be that. He wasn't, right? It happens. So I'm hoping that these guys pan out. So all their draft picks, let's use them. They have a very, very full cupboard. You're hoping that like 4 or 5 of these guys hit, and then we're all set, right? So with the draft, I liked it because there was really nothing for me to dislike. Obviously, getting DeBrincat later on, I'll take that too. But they did use an extra pick, right? They used that Boston pick next year. So in essence, they probably will get around the same pick, I would think. If we go through, we're going to see where we think the Bruins are going to be, right?
Yeah.
So I like the draft for sure.
I think I'm right there with you on the draft. That going into it, I was thinking to myself, you got to move it. And I'm completely off the mock draft. I'm tired of the experts saying how everyone's going to pan out. If those guys knew and everyone was so right all the time, they wouldn't be doing it for clicks on the internet. They wouldn't be doing it on your TV. They'd be paid an exorbitant number of dollars to go do that for an organization to say, hey, I know the top 10 players in this draft for sure. They don't. No one really knows. So I was fine. I was cool with that, seeing that we didn't do it. And I think just the absolute perfect storm on DeBrincat came to us and we took full advantage.
Speaking of DeBrincat, I want to say, looking back at the draft, I feel like it's way easier to be cool with it now with the hindsight, knowing we got DeBrincat later. At the time, I was bummed because I thought this meant we weren't getting DeBrincat. I thought our biggest trade value was going to be, we've got 3 seconds we're sitting on, we've got 2 firsts, we could put something together and bring in DeBrincat. We didn't know we were going to get him for the deal that we were going to. So I'm much happier now with the hindsight, of what the deal actually was. Now we have a bunch more guys in the system that Yzerman can get a chance to develop. What were you going to say, Buschy?
I was going to say it was literally just a game of leverage. So that was something where when they didn't make that trade in the first round, because you're putting a clock on it, literally, where Yzerman goes, all right, you don't have the offer that I really like. I don't have to make a trade right now. You kind of do.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just going to wait you out. I'm going to wait. And the longer this goes, we're going to cash in here. And I think they did. I think Ottawa did well with how it turned out. They should have traded him at the draft, is what they should have done. They probably would have got more.
I think the big issue is he wasn't going to sign an extension anywhere. So he was strong arming the Senators, and then the Senators were getting strong armed by the Red Wings. So like, Senators were just in an awful spot. And I think they did they did do well with what they got out of it.
Before we move into our actual predictions, I want to ask about one other move in the offseason that was polarizing. Justin Hall. What were your feelings at the time, and what are your feelings now after you've had some time to, take that in?
My initial reaction, I have in video form. If you guys want to go check that out. What I will say, at the time, I was furious because they had just signed James Reimer, which I kind of was like, I don't really super understand that one either. And then it was like 5 minutes later, they signed Justin Hall. And I have Maple Leafs friends, that like that team, that all they talked about was they talked about Justin Hall like I used to talk about Jonathan Ericsson. Okay.
Oh, no.
So I was not happy with it. And when I saw it was 3 years and he's making this much, I'm like, oh my God, we already have like a guy like Ben Sherratt. And I'm like, this is not going to work out. But with most things, I think our first instinct is either wrong or like incomplete. So the more that I sat back, I looked at some of the advanced stats. He's actually a pretty good defensive defenseman, and he does have some offensive upside. The issue was in Toronto, where everything is magnified. He made big mistakes at the wrong time, and it was magnified, right? So now he has a reputation with Leafs fans. I'm saying to Red Wings fans that are watching this, don't be Buschy. Just give him a shot. Okay, I'm giving him a shot. Now I hope he's really, really good. Like I hope everybody wearing that jersey is. But yeah, at the time I was not a fan at all.
That was a damn funny video. So if you have not seen that, you should go watch that of Buschy, because that is absolutely worth the
It's
minutes.
not for the children, that's for sure.
No.
Yeah.
Sounds like we're pretty much on the same page all through the offseason, even from our initial reaction to our more, thought out reactions. So let's see if this is where things start to split off. Now, if you've watched a few of our videos in the past, we respond to just about every single comment down below. So if you want to jump down there, and before we jump into predictions, if you want to throw any predictions that you have for the season, if you want to give us a full list, let us know. If you just want to throw in where you think the Red Wings are going to fall, if they're going to be a playoff team, throw a prediction down that is completely uninfluenced by this video, and then feel free to go back and add to it later, maybe after we've discussed it a bit. We're going to start from the bottom. So you being the guest, I'm absolutely going to throw it on you first. So I want to know, in the Eastern Conference, and this is all, and if we didn't make it clear at the beginning, we're going to focus on the Eastern Conference. We'll touch a little bit on the West when it comes to the actual far end of the line playoffs later in the video. But diving into the Eastern Conference, in last place in the conference, who is going to be the bottom feeder?
We might start with maybe a little bit of a shocker. We'll see if you guys.
Start hot.
Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers are going to be utter dog water this year. And I don't understand what they're doing. I really don't. They didn't bring in anybody. They brought in Ryan Poehling, Garnet Hathaway, Mark Stahl, and Cal Peterson. Nothing's going to move the needle there. If anything, it's going to make them worse. They were at kind of the bottom, last year, and they have John Tortorella as a coach. I don't know what they thought or who they think they are, but that's not going to work. Halfway through the year, this is going to fall apart, and they are going to be at the bottom of the East. I would put some money on that.
Well, Buschy, with how hot you started, I got to let you know, I agree with you. In last place, I had the Flyers. There's nothing good. There's nothing good about this team. They don't have an identity. In the offseason, they were selling. In the offseason, they had rumors of even selling more people, which are probably going to happen at the deadline with Konechny and Hart. So it is exactly what you said. Where's this team going? They're just entering rebuild, but Torts is not the coach for a rebuild. I believe
it's they're rebuilding, but they're not really.
Yep.
They're just we're gonna go for it. With who?
It's a complete.
We got nobody.
It's a complete mess, and I feel like they're likely to be the worst team.
Remember the brief period where Torts was seen as kind of a really good coach of
when he had a good New York team. Yeah.
There was a brief period
when he won the cup. Yeah.
there was a brief period where his style was really looked upon as really strong, and now it's I'm looking at. I can see Billy's notes. He just has Torts ... is Torts.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Torts he's so abrasive that if you put him with a team that needs to get over the hump, he'll work for a year, maybe two, but after that, it's done. because his message wears thin, and then that's it, right? So he's good for like a year or two, and then that's it. With a bottom feeder like this, it's not going to work.
All right, then how about we snake draft this? So Billy, why don't you give us who's going to come in right above the Flyers?
The Montreal Canadiens, a team again that seems to be lacking a bit of an identity, other than they just have young players that show promise. When you have like Suzuki, Caulfield, Slafkovsky, Doc, Newhook, Buschy, I hope I pronounced that right. Like, they have so many great young pieces that can go do something for them. They're rebuilding. They, I think, have hit the start of that pretty well. I know they went to the Cup Finals not too long ago, and I doubt they expected to see themselves in this position. But like, they have two very old goaltenders in Allen and DeSmith that aren't going to do well for them in this division specifically. What do you have in 15th, Buschy?
This is going to be a shocker, but Montreal Canadiens, I agree, but I do. I have them there. Like, I mean, they were at the bottom last year. I will say, though, they have a nice young team that's going to be up and coming down the line in a few years. Yep. And I have one of my good buddies as a Habs fan. And even when they went to the final, I kind of went, this might be fool's gold. I think they went on a run, the whole COVID thing. And, you know, I do agree, you know, with the goaltending tandem, it's just they're in a rebuild right now. So they are way ahead of the Philadelphia Flyers. They already have their young pieces. They don't really have anything more, I think, to sell off when I looked at their roster. But, I mean, having, you know, those young kids like, you know, we say Doc, Suzuki, Caulfield, you know, they have a young core that is going to grow together. So, yeah, I would say that they're probably going to be, they'll be at the bottom, but not as bad as Philly.
All right, then Buschy, who's sneaking in right above the Habs?
I am going to go with Mike Babcock and the Columbus Blue Jackets. I don't see that working like at all. I'm not sure who they think they are either. So Columbus, they had like 57 points last year. Like, they were terrible. And, you know, didn't win the Bedard sweepstakes, so that sucks. But they did get Adam Fantilli. You know, they added Ivan Provorov. Are they going to move the needle that much? I think Fantilli's a great player from Michigan, right? Played for the Wolverines. And I just don't think they did enough to get that much better. Like, on paper, their roster looks nice. But with guys like Goudreau, you know, Patrick Laine, like, I think those guys kind of sometimes disappear. You know, and I don't think those are really playoff performers. So I will say Columbus at 14.
All right, 14 for me. It gets a little spicy here for myself. This was like my first, like, ooh, this might be a little hot. And I'm going to go with the most boring team in the entire NHL to watch. It's New York Islanders. They're old. They're slow. They don't have offense. And that entire team, like, the entire weight of that team is on Sorokin's back. I'm not sure how they're going to do it. They've continuously gotten worse and worse. They made no acquisitions. They did not get better. And it's just so tough to see how they're going to win games other than winning 2-1. You're not going to get that much out of this Eastern Conference at all.
This is where I have a different team here. This might be shocking too, but Washington Capitals. And for the same reasons that you just said about the Islanders, I think I could probably flip-flop some of these. But I really think, you know, Washington, they're at a point now where you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Red Wings in like 2014, 2015, where it's like, all right, we're getting to the end here. We've got these older guys. Pittsburgh's there now where they're still like trying to go for it. Washington might be at a point where this is it, you know, with Ovechkin, you know, with Backstrom, they're at the end of the line, and I don't think they have much help. And they didn't really sign that many players either that I can think of. So I'm going to go with Washington. They added Joel Edmondson. That's all they did. Yeah. So I think that the Islanders and Washington, you know, different teams, but in a similar situation, I'd say.
So I'm very, very close to you here because now in this 13th spot, I have the Jackets, and I gave them a little more credit because Laine was hurt, Werenski was hurt, Gaudreau and Laine, you're giving them another chance. Maybe they were able to build up some chemistry to do a little better. You got that hit or miss goalie in Merzlikins. Like, he can be, you know, Jaguar back in 2003, or he's going to be like Casey DeSmith. You never know what you're going to get out of him. So that's where I ended up putting the Blue Jackets. And I'll tell you right now, I'm worried about Ken Johnson absolutely being a dude. Like, I feel like he kind of flies under the radar of young talent across the league because it is Columbus, because it is a smaller market in comparison to the rest of the NHL. But Ken Johnson, I'm gonna look out for him this year.
Another Michigan guy.
Yep.
Do the Wolverines just pump out all this top talent? They can never win the Frozen Four. I don't get it. So here's where we are going to piss off a lot of people. Okay. You guys ready to take the heat?
Oh,
Because next up, okay, 16, 15, 14, 30, 12th in the Eastern Conference. The Ottawa Senators are not as good as you think, okay? They're not as good as you think. You
Oh, I
got
can already
Tarasenko, great.
hear the
You got
at tags and all.
I'm so scared. Oh my God, please don't come at me with your 0 cups since 1919 when it didn't even really matter. Okay, DeBrincat trade, we just gave you a little credit. You did okay. Tarasenko, I like Tarasenko, okay,
Same.
but is he going to be the player that he was? I think there's a lot of players there that need to have like amazing seasons, and they have a good core. Let me just say that, okay?
Yes.
I'm being a dick because it's Ottawa and there's this weird rivalry between the fans of two teams that right now are absolute mid, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I will say that like Tim Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, even like Sanderson contract looked a little suspect to me. We'll find out 8 years. Thomas Chabot and the Jacob Chikrin thing. They have a good core, but I'm not sold on Korpisalo. I'm really not.
Yeah, I can see
I don't
that.
think they have a good goalie. I don't think he had that good of a season. So to give him that big contract, they're in a little bit of tough water. I really think that Anton Forsberg should be your guy, and they didn't even need Korpisalo, but they think he's going to be something. But I don't know. I think the Sens are a little bit overrated. They get talked about a ton. So does Buffalo. I think they're all in the same kind of grouping. But yeah, no, Ottawa's going to be 12th.
I just want to say that I'm glad you're giving credit on the DeBrincat trade out of everything you're saying about the Senators, because I've seen a lot of Red Wings fans actually attack it from, oh, they got fleeced by Yzerman. It might seem like that to the untrained eye, but anybody who's been paying attention, Ottawa really had no leverage. Like the fact that they got what they got for DeBrincat.
They got a 20-goal scorer. They got a first-round pick. And I mean, they got a prospect as well, and then a late pick. That's pretty damn good, for what they did. Now, again, I think they could have got more if they would have done it at the draft, but they didn't. So
probably, and something that would have had a more immediate effect with those picks. I'm sure they could have done that. But I do give credit to the Sens front office for managing to get some value in a trade where you had no leverage. You have like it was a foregone conclusion that DeBrincat knew where he was gonna play at some point, and you were either gonna get something for it or you weren't. Yeah, you were either gonna get something for it or you weren't, and they got something for it. So props to them
for sure.
So I feel like we're just playing like chase to you now. Like I'm just behind you on one step on everything. Next up, I have the Capitals. They're old.
Fair.
They had some injuries last year, but I'm not trusting, these aged players to recover from these injuries and come out and have a spectacular year. I think you're dead on that, they might be looking in the rear view at what was and looking forward just at the Ovi Gretzky chase. That's the entire shtick to the Capitals for me. They're in my top 3-4 favorite teams across the league. I'm not going to be unrealistic about them. It just feels like the wheels are starting to come off. You signed Wilson to a big contract that I don't think he's worth. He's still a bit older too. Kemper has just shown he needs a stronger defense. I didn't think that he was like this core piece to why the Avs won the cup. That was just an absolutely stacked roster. You could give him the Osgood treatment with that one. So, yeah, 12th, I have the Capitals. I think they're on the down.
Bill, I'm going to ask you one question. That Tom Wilson signing, we're all Wings fans here. Who did that remind you of in the same spot we just talked about? Washington being on that downturn, long-term contract, kind of a sandpaper guy. Who do you think I'm talking about?
Are you bringing up Applicator?
No, I would never do that. Yeah, it's Abby for
Okay,
sure.
like,
That's an applicator contract.
I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's absolutely an applicator contract. So you're going to like it for 2 years, and then it's going to suck. But that's all they need him for, I guess, because then they're going to be an absolute cap hell. So I will say next up now, I'm kind of a little bit higher on the Islanders, but I have New York, the Islanders next. You're right. They didn't really do anything. And I was waiting for them to make some type of move. But Lou Lamoriello is just cool with kind of sitting back, making sure people shave their faces. And that's it. He's just going to be a Hall of Fame GM and just not really care about if his team gets any better. So I see them being a middle of the pack team like they were last year, not making really that big of moves. I mean, what are you expecting to do? They literally
Yeah.
did nothing. But they were a 90-point team, so they were on the cusp of a wild card. So that's kind of where I would see them, being as well, unless they completely fall off, which could happen.
We're gonna wrap up the bottom 6 here, right? Bottom 5, where I now have the Ottawa Senators. So our middle thing here was just me being a little lower on the Islanders than you, and then just following you every step up that ladder. They're definitely a young team, just continuing to grow. They play tough. That top line, I think, can play with most lines across the NHL, except for the elite of the elite. I think they are great. I think it's very, very difficult to play against them. I think that second line, now that you got Kubalik, who might be hopping up there with them, can start to do things. But you already saw a DeBrincat struggle a little bit there. I know that Josh Norris is coming back from his injury. That could be great for him. But when I look at their third and fourth lines, I have huge questions. And it leads to the questions that make you lose in the playoffs very easily. It makes you maybe not have the long stretches of success, because that's what I know Ottawa fans complain about their team with, is they're like, oh, if we don't start the season 2-8, we would make the playoffs. And you're like, well, that matters. Hitting these dead periods where you're hopefully going to be able to rely on some depth on defense, on forward, to be able to score some goals, or you need the goalie to steal a couple wins for you. Is Korpisalo stealing wins? Is Forsberg going to steal wins? It feels
Maybe
really
a few.
difficult. Yeah, maybe a couple here or there. You're going to play some duds some nights, but it's really difficult to buy into the full roster, but it's easy to buy in on their top two lines. So that's why I have them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's going to be a real hit or miss season for them. I'm going to think miss because of how unreliable the roster is. So at number 10, I regretfully have the Detroit Red Wings. I'm high on them. I think we're going to be better, in placing number 10 would do that. I think we made some large improvements defensively. We got a goal scorer, but we also got so many new faces. It's almost an entire new middle six. Even a couple of the bottom pieces, 3 of our defensemen are going to be new in the system. It's really tough to say that, you just went out, you made all these acquisitions, and you're going to put all of this together in the pot, mix it up. I mean, you know what? You're going to make the playoffs, because the East is such a blender. And that's what we're really starting to get into here in these next few picks, where when I was making this, I kept saying oh, I could see this team above this team. Oh, but I could definitely see this team here. So if you start making me place very reasonable bets on teams, we are so reliant on our young players stepping up this season that it becomes tough to say, yes, that's going to happen. And then also this other established team is going to become so much worse. So that's why I have them at 10. It's not a dig. It's not that we're bad. We're continuously growing. And I still think that this team could surprise us, play above my expectation, and make the playoffs. I'm going to put them at 10 and say they don't. Buschy, who do you have at 10?
I am going to say at 10, and this is something where you're talking about teams falling off. And this, again, it could be bold, but this is called a prediction video, right?
Yep.
The Florida Panthers are not going to make the playoffs after making the Stanley Cup final. You know why? Because it reminds me of Montreal when they made it. It feels a little bit like fool's gold. Do they have some good players? Yeah. I love Matthew Tkachuk. That trade worked out really well for them. But if you guys remember, they went to the final, but they literally scratched and clawed, no pun intended, to get into that wild card spot. They were a point out of the playoffs, and they got in at one of the last days of the season. They almost missed. So I don't think it's too far-fetched to say Florida might not make the playoffs, because guess what? They didn't make any changes either. They brought in Evan Rodriguez. That's about it. So they're rolling with kind of the same group. Obviously, they lost Alex Lyon, as a backup. So I don't even know who they have as their backup. They got Bobrovsky. If Spencer Knight comes back in, I don't think he was even listed when I looked. But from going from winning the President's Trophy to that, and then making the final, kind of an absolute bizarro thing. You think it would, be the other way around type of thing. You're going to be really good at the same time. I could see a world where Florida does not do that well this year and runs out of that gas from going to the final, playing that much hockey, going that high. Now you have all these expectations. I don't know if that team is going to handle those expectations really well. So that's one of the reasons I have them not making the playoffs.
You are speaking to my heart. When I was making this list, my heart, even last year, I called them the Fraudra Panthers. I just don't believe in them at all. Every playoff series, I said, nope, not this one. They move on. Nope, not this one. They move on. Nope, not this one. They sweep my Hurricanes. And I'm like, no way. They're not winning the cup. And then they don't, of course. And you're like, ha, frauds. Caught you losing in the finals. But they do.
You guys suck.
Yeah. You're
I wish we sucked like that.
You're absolutely you're absolutely speaking to my
heart. You guys made the finals and lost. You guys suck.
Yeah, you're speaking to my heart. And I'm gonna continue on the teams that are probably starting to fall down a bit with my number 9, and it's the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's an old team again, just getting older. I know they went out and they got Erik Karlsson. Guess what? He's not doing anything for you defensively, and your goaltending's already suspect. Your defense is already suspect. He's gonna get you more points, sure, and maybe that's what puts him over the edge to make the playoffs again. But I think everyone else around them still gets a little older, a little slower, a little worse. And I do want to give credit. I wanted him so bad. Ryan Graves from the Devils. They signed him. When I saw that happen, I won't lie, I was a little disappointed. I'm pretty sure that was like a little after we had our Hall signing. I believe the Hall signing came first, and I was like, we didn't get Graves. I would have paid Graves that money, absolutely.
I think Ryan Graves is actually a really nice player, and I do agree with you. To put him in that mix would have been nice. But like what I will say is I have a little bit of I think we're going to have completely different here, and we're going to kind of jump each other again. I had them not making it last year, and I was absolutely 1,000% wrong, but I'm going to double down. The Boston Bruins are going to go from President's Trophy, record winning, to not making the playoffs. Again, bold, I know. But when you lose your top 2 centermen, you lose a guy like Patrice Bergeron. He is so good, but he's still, in my opinion, underrated for what he does. He is the best defensive forward probably in the last 30 years, like since I've been alive. And the only other guy that I would think that would be even like still in that conversation would be Pavel Datsyuk.
Yep.
Like those 2 guys were so good in their own end defensively. Losing him, in my opinion, is like losing a 50 goal scorer that's also going to save you like 30 goals.
Yeah.
You're losing almost 80 goals with Patrice Bergeron, let's just say, right? The plus minus. And then, David Krejci, yeah, he's older, but he was still decently effective. Now, your top line center is Pavel Zacha, and your second line center is Charlie Coyle. That's not going to work.
Yeah, I will dive into the Bruins too a little bit, and I'll tell you why I believe in them a little more than you in a little bit. But I do have the opportunity here to say that the first team to make the playoffs for myself at the 8th seed would be the Florida Panthers. So we weren't too far off in the general standings. I'm not a huge believer. I already said that they don't have my heart, but they have my mind. Like, it just feels like it's so tough to play against them. You wanted to talk about the backup, Spencer Knight. I love Spencer Knight. He's supposed to be back. He's supposed to be back from the player assistant program. So hopefully he's better with that. I believe I read a report in late July saying that he's planning on being back. It's just a difficult team throughout their entire lineup. I think the additions in Ekman Larson and Rodriguez are fine. I think Rodriguez goes a little bit under the radar, probably like a Kubalik does, where someone hears the name and they don't think twice about it. But if you watch him, you have a little more value to him. And Matthew Tkachuk, if he continues to put up 100-point seasons, I didn't think that he would last year. I think they're just incredibly difficult to play against, and that's why they're gonna find another way to scrape in.
Yeah, I don't really look that high on Oliver Ekman-Larsson. That's where I would look at that and go, they think they're adding a guy. I don't know. I look at it and go, I think he's over the hill, but it's worth a gamble. They're not paying him that much, right?
Yep.
So
then Buschy, who's your first wild card team sneaking in?
I don't know if you guys noticed who is in the playoffs, boys. The Detroit Red Wings are going to get that second wild card spot. This is the year. It's going to happen. I mean, all of those changes, like Billy said, if you want to look at it and, hey, we're adding a lot of ingredients to this soup. Like, is it going to taste good? Yeah, I think it's going to. I think the guys that they moved out and moved in this year completely offset each other in all the best ways. Now, we talked about, you're turning over most of your team, but getting a guy like DeBrincat, where he can potentially get 40 goals. Even looking at Larkin, playing with someone like that now, you don't think he's going to be better than he has been? He's been doing it largely, I don't want to say by himself, but without that elite help. I'm not saying, that Lucas Raymond can't be elite, but DeBrincat is. JT Compher was a guy that I really, really wanted for the Red Wings in that second line center spot to be what Andrew Kopp should have been. I think Kopp's going to be that third line kind of guy beyond the wing. And then Sprong, 20 goals. Klim Kostin is an ex first round pick, that has some grit, that had 11 goals and 10 assists in like fourth line duties with the Oilers, right? Christian Fischer, apparently a good locker room guy. Same with Petrie. Same, Shane Gostisbehere had 41 points. Their power play is going to be a lot better with him on it. Hall, we talked about. Reimer, we talked about. They're bringing in all these guys, and then you're not even talking about, we need Raymond to have a bounce back year, and I think he will. You got Mo Seider with a lot more help now. My only thing is we had probably 2/3 of the season of a healthy Ville Husso, and he was terrific, but he didn't have help. So the only problem that I can see is James Reimer being the James Reimer of last year. Granted, he played on a terrible Sharks team, but I think that's why they also signed Alex Lyon, because you saw what he did getting the Panthers into the playoffs. He's a big part of how they got in. So I think when you mash all these lines together, they have so much more depth now, and they have the pieces to still make moves, right?
Yes.
So I'm looking at, okay, well, what can they add now? It's going to be more apparent throughout the year, but I really think that this is a year where I really want to see the Wings maybe buy at the deadline. Maybe not a rental, but maybe someone has a couple years left, and it's like, hey, we can move maybe a prospect, or we're in the position that we have so much depth in our prospect pool or with our team that we can move a guy to get someone that's proven, now. So I really think that they can make the next step. I'm not saying, okay, everybody, I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs. I want them to, but this is just looking
Lock it in. Wings straight to the finals.
Shoot the boot. Yeah, Stanley Cup champs this year. From worst to first. But I do have a lot of confidence in them. I mean, obviously it's our team, but I do understand, Billy having them outside looking in, because that is realistic, right? I think in my heart of hearts, that's probably what I think will happen. But I don't think getting in that wild card spot, I don't think it's out of the realm, because there's always teams that do fall off, and there are teams that do get better. But like you did say, Billy, like it all the stars have to align.
Yep.
And there are a lot of factors, and that's why I talked so much about who we brought in and what's going to happen. So
yes,
I'm higher on the Red Wings. I think they can make it in. So
I think they can. I think it's speaking to like my highest level of expectation for them. What I wanted this year was to just play meaningful games towards the end of the year, to just let everyone know. I know I said I had them in 10th. Last year, in 10th place, missing the playoff by a single point, were the Sabres. That's not that, like, I think this, like, 5 teams between, like, 7 to 11, man, it's such a, like, contested area that you don't know what's going to happen. It kind of feels like top 3 in each division feel locked. Yeah. And then, like, these 2 wild card spots are so hot. It feels like any of the teams could do it.
I'm going to say from the 2 wildcard spots, and then I have Boston, Florida, the Islanders, Ottawa. Like, you could probably interchange all of those teams. So for all the Senators fans that got really mad at me like 5 minutes ago, there's an olive branch for you.
There you go. So, it would be great. You said something. You said about you'd love to see the Wings be a buyer. And if we get to that point and it does look like they are buying, that says so much, because that's Yzerman making that call. Yep. And that if you get any sort of an indicator that Steve Yzerman believes we could do something this year, I'm sitting up in my chair. I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm kind of like, okay, if Yzerman's in, I'm in, like, I'm all in now at this point. Like, because Yzerman always seems like he's going to be the one where we could be in first place in December. He'd be like, well, we're still in that rebuild. Like, dude, just be happy for a second. Come on. Just tell me you feel something so I know they're heading there.
He said it a few days ago about, well, should you guys make the playoffs? He's like, well, we'll see. Like, it's not like a hard goal. Like, of course we want to make the playoffs, but it's not like, hey, we have to do it this year. And I think, some Red Wings fans will look at that and go, oh my God, what are we doing here? Well, you know what? I think I always preach patience. I know it's like year 5, but from cleaning up the crap that Ken Holland left to now with the turnover on the roster,
Mhm.
patience is something that's going to build this thing properly. And he keeps
Yep.
talking about not just making the playoffs. He keeps talking about multiple playoff appearances, multiple Stanley Cup finals. Like that's the
Wants to
goal.
build it to
It's not
last.
to be it's not to be good one year and then that's it. The difference with Steve Yzerman, the reason he's getting so much time is because it's Steve Yzerman
Yep.
and it's Detroit. But at the same time, you can look at a lot of other franchises throughout history where GMs come in and they have 3 years to make something happen
Yep.
where the guys you picked in year 1 haven't even made your team yet. Like, how are you supposed to know if your draft picks were good or not? If your
And then the
moves are going
next
to pay
GM
off?
comes in, and then those players that were previously drafted
Exactly.
works out, and now this new GM gets all the credit.
GM of the
Yeah.
year. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what I would say to Wings fans is that's why I say patience. And it's like, yeah, if they don't make it this year, you think I'm going to burn the house down? No. I mean, I'm not going to be happy about it,
Yep.
Even if they
but it's
don't make it, you
realistic.
still feel confident there's an upswing, and
Yep.
next year's going to be an even stronger team.
It's because
Yep.
people want Steve Yzerman to say, hey, 2025 is the year that I planted the whole Yzer plan
It would
thing.
be
He probably
convenient
laughs about. There's
just
no
in each year.
Yzer plan, right? He's trying to make his team better every single year so that eventually we are in the playoffs and we won't have to worry
Yeah.
about that, right? But you put an expectation on it. Now you're setting yourself up for failure. Now you're in a pickle. Steve Yzerman doesn't talk with his words. He says a lot, but he says nothing. He talks with how he's doing things, and if you can peel back the layers and look at the way this is going, it's all going well,
And that's the
right? So
last
that's
thing.
why
That's the last thing I want to chime in on is that I'm so confident that Yzerman is not one to sit on the fence. Yzerman's going to make moves, whether that's buying, whether that's selling. Something is happening on those days every single year that are going to show where he believes this team is. So going with Josh, if he's buying, he believes he's in on it. And last year we were at a couple points out of the playoffs, and we hit the trade deadline. You saw him sell. I mean, I was on the same page as him. I didn't see what I wanted to see out of the team necessarily. So knowing that we got the GM that's going to make the moves is very comforting.
well, it was one of those things with those two Senators games. I think a lot of fans probably thought, well, if they win these two games, like it's going to change things, and maybe, and I think Eisman even said maybe it would have, but he knew
He knew
beforehand,
before those
we're
games.
not built for this yet. Like, I want to see us compete. The fact that they didn't, I was like, okay, it's exactly what I thought. I'm going to go and do what I was going to do anyway. He said it just delayed kind of what he was going to do.
Yep.
Right.
Like
So
it's
he has a
exactly
plan.
like what Dan Campbell said after week 1 of Lions game. I didn't learn anything. What I already knew got verified, and that's it. That's
You guys
exactly what
had a really
Eisman was
fun
thinking
week
with
1,
Ottawa.
didn't you?
Oh, yeah. All right. Speaking of the team that finished 10th last year in the Sabres, I got him finishing 7th this time. I think that young team is coming up. I love Tage Thompson, man. I love watching him play. Honestly, the way I think about him is that's what we wanted Mantha to be. He's the bigger body, plays strong on the puck, has one hell of a shot, and he just scores, man. He just works so hard all the time. You got someone like Alex Tuck down in your lineup. I think that's a fantastic spot for him. They got the big acquisition in Connor Clifton. That's so good for their defense, which was already a little suspect. And the biggest concern they have, again, is goaltending. But you have 2 prospects. You have 2 guys that could possibly take that number 1 job in Comrie and Luukkonen. So I'm just high on the Sabres. They're I'll admit, one of my more favorite teams from being a child. I love those black and red jerseys. That's what got me as a kid to
Bring them back. They brought them back this year. They were so cool.
They
Like,
play the Wings in them
bring
this
them back,
year.
man.
They play them in the Wings this year with them. It's going to be so cool.
Well, I agree with you on Buffalo. I have them a little higher, but in my first wild card spot, I actually have the Pittsburgh Penguins. And this kind of was something where I went, do I really want to put them here? Does Erik Karlsson put them over the top? I don't think it puts them over the top. I think it puts them in the playoff hunt. Now, like I said before, I think these 2 wild card spots, I have the Penguins and Wings, all the way down to where I had the Senators. All those teams I could flip around,
Yep.
and I think I'd be okay with it, right? And I'd be like, yeah, it makes sense. But the Penguins, I think this is the last hurrah. With Sid and Gino and Letang, bringing in Erik Karlsson, sounds nice. But here's the thing: you guys know that I'm a big fan of like some of the advanced stats and how you can break a player down. Erik Karlsson is the most elite defenseman offensively, like 100
Mhm.
point season. I don't think he'll be able to do that again. I mean, maybe with these guys he will,
Yeah.
power plays and such. But he is the biggest liability in the NHL defensively. He doesn't chip in that way. So it's you're kind of getting all of one and none of the other, right? Is that what the Penguins need? Because yeah, we'll take the points, but I don't know if just that is going to get them where they need to be. Now they picked up Riley Smith. I mean, Stanley Cup champion. He's a very nice player when he was with Vegas. Lars Eller has won a cup with the
Yep.
Capitals. They brought in Noel Acciari, who's a nice bottom six guy. That you said Graves as well, and then brought in Nedeljkovic. You think he had his moments with the Wings. Will he be better than Casey DeSmith? I don't know. Probably it'd be the same, but like those moves, they're trying to do what they can. I mean, this is Kyle Dubas's team now, right? So
Yep.
he's gonna go and put his print on it. Well, his whole print in Toronto was lots of goals and not so much defense. So
True.
it looks like he's doing the same thing with the Penguins.
So
So
true.
I think they'll be a fun team to watch, but I don't have them going into that upper tier, the top three in the division though.
Yep.
All right, so we've gotten the teams that are going to miss the playoffs. Have you both given the our two wild card spots?
Yep.
Buschy, you're our guest. So this is where we're going to split into either the top three, Atlantic or Metro. You tell us which one are we going into first. You want to give us your bottom Metro team, or bottom of the three, Metro or Atlantic?
Let's start with the Metro because I don't think these are going to be really shocking. So I have at number 1 in the Metro division, I think it's going to be the New Jersey Devils. I think they're actually going to be at the top of the East. That team is absolutely stacked. They might have the best top 6 in the league. I mean, I think you can put them up there for sure. Even like picking up Tyler Toffoli and just throwing him in there, it's like you got to be kidding me. Like he's going to bag 30 for sure. Number 2, I have the Carolina Hurricanes. Now they, again, you said they got swept, but I think they ran out of gas. And I've always liked how the Hurricanes play. I mean, they picked up Michael Bunting, who I'm not a huge fan of, but we're gonna see, him away from Matthews and Marner. I think he's mostly kind of an Abdulkader clone. That's
Yeah.
another one we'll talk about. But and even bringing in Dmitry Orlov, that's a big pickup for them as well. You lose Gostisbehere, you get in Orlov, another offensive guy. So I think they did really well with keeping that core together. And guess what? You're going to have a healthy Svechnikov now too, because they went through the playoffs without their best player, right? And
Yep.
so I think Carolina will be 2, and then number 3 I have the New York Rangers. I think one of the best goalie in the league, Igor Shesterkin. The Rangers, they brought in some depth pieces. I don't think they really needed much. They are already pretty top heavy. They did lose Tarasenko. I think probably if Kane does come back, he'll probably go to the Rangers, I would think. Eric Gustafson's a nice, kind of, bottom pair defense. And then you got Jonathan Quick as your backup. That's kind of nice to have a 2-time cup champ, backing up Shesterkin. You can learn from him too. So can you think if Igor got even better than he is now? That's scary. So those are my top 3 in the Metro. But I think those 3, I would lock those in. I don't think anybody's going to pass those 3 teams in the Metro.
Yeah, I'm going to lock in the same 3, and it's a little different order. I'm high on the Hurricanes. I think getting Svech back is huge. Like you said, Orlov, I love Orlov. I loved him with the Caps. I was so impressed with what he did with Boston last year. I think that kind of gave him the spotlight outside of, the Ovi Backstrom, Oshie Carlson package in Washington. I think he had a little coming out party with the Bruins. So got the Hurricanes number 1. And the other thing, you already hit a lot of the points that I made, but I do want to point out they have 3 goalies that could easily start on almost any team in the NHL. And that's Anderson, Ranta, and Kochechkov. Like Kochechkov, man, he's exciting. I like watching him play. A goalie with some attitude, a little spark in him. Absolutely love it. Freddie Anderson, super reliable. Ranta is probably the most suspicious goalie, I think, the most hit or miss out of them. Next up, I have the Devils, who are an absolute wagon. They are the example of what you want your rebuild to turn into. Get a few young pieces, they become studs. You get, a Dougie Hamilton. When they acquired Dougie Hamilton, I was like, what are you guys doing? Why is this the move that you guys are making? Like, this is way too much for a team that isn't going to be good, and let alone 2 years later, they're absolutely destroying in the playoffs. And I think their goalies, I didn't know anything about Schmidt at all. But man, what he showed in those playoffs shows that I think they have a solid 1A, 1B. I think they have just a well-rounded team in general. And in last, we agree that we got the Rangers. They are just consistently fine, right? They never like excite me. They're one of like a team that I root for. Like I said, I mentioned a couple times, a couple of these teams are like in my top 4 in the NHL. They're all in the East. But you got Shesterkin, who the Rangers absolutely got the Green Bay Packers effect of moving on from Henrik Lundqvist, aka Brett Favre, to Igor Shesterkin, aka Aaron Rodgers. So just moving from a probable or like a for sure Hall of Famer into, from what we're seeing right now, gonna be a Hall of Famer out of Shesterkin if he keeps up what he's doing, is absolutely crazy. They just play so slow. They play a boring style of hockey. It feels like Panarin lost a spark a little bit. Feels like when he used to be fast and flashy, now it's just kind of like muddied a little bit, I guess. It feels like he's like starting to play down to the speed of the Rangers. And you add Blake Wheeler, who's also just another slow player, but maybe that just fits, right? Maybe just adding a slow player into a slow lineup, it's at his pace and he excels. But yeah, those are my 1, 2, 3.
I would say they're D. I do like their top 4. I'll throw that out there too. That probably gets lost in the shuffle with like Zibanejad, Panarin, and all these studs they have. But like Fox and Lindgren are like one of the top pairs. I love those guys together. And then even K'Andre Miller, Jacob
Schneider,
Trouba.
Yeah. Oh,
Jacob elbows Trouba.
Gosh.
Yeah, just throwing elbows at everybody. One of my buddies hates Jacob Trouba. He's like, man, he's gonna just kill everybody in the league. It's like, well, he plays physical. But yeah, I did the Rangers. Those are ones where I would go like non-negotiable. I'd say Devils, Hurricanes, Rangers.
Yeah.
But I understand that the Hurricanes for sure.
That's going to move us to the Atlantic. And I think to some people's surprise, and maybe it's just PTSD, maybe it's just being beat by them for so long that it's hard for me not to like count them at the very top. I got the Lightning. It just feels like a roster that consistently stays good. Vasi is still the number 1 in the world. I won't hear any arguments on it. That guy is an absolute monster. They got rid of some old slow legs. They brought in some newer, younger ones. The core is still there. It feels like whenever they bring someone up, they just fit somewhere in that lineup. And you're like, oh, never heard of that guy. Yeah, well, they brought him up. He's just performing well for him. You're like, oh, so you guys are just consistently good all the time. Yes. So I'm going to have them leading the Atlantic. Up next, I got the Leafs, who it just feels like, man, that top 2 line is just too strong. It's too much scoring during the regular season that teams don't like buckle down every game like you would see in the playoffs when someone goes against them. Suddenly, like their crazy goal scoring in the regular season turns into nothing in the playoffs. And it's because, oh, we just got to, lock down and just play against their depth lines. Yeah, we can outscore their 3rd and 4th lines. And you have Mark Giordano with absolute dust for knees going out there trying to play
held together by
defense.
Scotch tape.
Yeah, and like it's weird. The Toronto people are weird on how much crap they gave Justin Hall, but like suddenly Mark Giordano, they're like, yeah, we love having him here. Love having Mark Giordano. You're like, what are you talking about? Like, that's where Hull should be. That's where he's gonna be with us. And like, he's significantly better. There's a reason he was your number 1 defenseman. He's gonna be like R4 or 5. Like, so I hate to have it here. I don't like this team, but I just can't deny how good they are defensively. Is Boston Bruins. I have them, finishing 6th overall, just making it out of the wild card. But man, they are defensively so strong. I don't know where their goal scoring is going to come from, but if we've already seen how the Islanders can, make the playoffs a few years in a row with how good they were in net and defensively, and the goal scoring was hit or miss, like you still have Pasternak. He's still an absolute, monster on the power play, everything like that. I feel like I got burned by counting him out last year, and I'm not ready to touch that again. I'm ready.
Join me.
Yeah.
Join me, Billy, on the dark side. Do it again. Dude, just double down on it. That's what I did. Come on over.
I can't. I don't like the.
You're gonna be right eventually. Yeah. You don't want to. You don't want to flip and then they miss and you could have looked good.
Yeah, I'm taking that risk.
If they make it this year and we do this show next year, you promise me you come over and be on the other side with me, because maybe the next year it'll happen, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
it has to eventually.
So yeah, I'm putting Boston as the 6th team in the East.
So I will say, my top 3 here. So my third, we'll say, I actually have the Buffalo Sabres. So that's something where I know we were talking about the Sabres, the Wings, and the Senators kind of being grouped together. I kind of look at it that way. But I also think that in a group like that, there's going to be like an outlier that does really well, one that doesn't do well, and one that's just this is where they should be. So I think that Buffalo has such a nice young core, but like Tage Thompson, you already talked about him. I mean, there's no other player in the league that is 6'6", that moves like that can shoot like that, and that has hands like that. It's
Yep.
unbelievable. Just all of a sudden, this guy's a stud, right? But my number two in that division is going to be Tampa Bay Lightning. The reason that I think Tampa Bay is going to be good for years because like literally everybody on their team is locked up for like 8 years.
Yeah.
But the only problem that I see with that is they're going to get older every year, and I just don't see where like how much flexibility are you going to have, right? Like if someone doesn't pan out, like just for example, if Eric Chernak doesn't keep playing the way he usually does, how are you going to move him? You can't. Like it's really really hard to lock yourself into those long-term deals, and that's why you see Steve Yzerman not doing that, right? You want that flexibility. Like if it works out and that guy is awesome for 8 years, it's a Kucherov or it's a Braden Point, I get it. They're signing them for 8 years so that the first 3 or 4, their window's still open and we'll worry about it later, right? That's how I look at the Tampa Bay Lightning is let's just keep our guys however we can, right? Let's not dick around with it. But I don't like their bottom six anymore. I think that third line that they lost all in 1 year, like it was Goudreau, Blake Coleman, Yanni Gord, like they don't have that anymore. They do have young guys that they can plug in, and like Ross Colton, they lost him too. Like they're gonna run out of players that can just come in and plug and play, I think. And this might be the year, but I still think they're going to be a very good team. If you have Vasilevsky, Hedman, Stamkos, Kucherov, Point, you go down the list, Sergachev, it's like they have a lot of very good players that will carry them. And to my dismay, I put the Toronto Maple Leafs at the top because guess what? They're an amazing regular season team. They're incredible in the regular season. Matthews is going to bag 60. Marner will have like 100 billion points. Tavares will be okay and have like 70. And, the guys that they added, I'm not too sure that I think Leafs fans, like a lot of times, they'll overvalue their own players, or they'll look at the guys they got and go, oh my God, these guys are awesome. We all know Tyler Bertuzzi, that he's a good player, and he was good in the playoffs. Will that help them if they make the playoffs? It should. It really should. But a guy like John Klingberg, you bring him in, that guy is an Erik Karlsson clone, but just like 3 times not as good.
Yeah.
So defensively, horrendous. Offensively, very, very good. Max Domi, pretty good offensively. Is he really a good defensive player? Not so much. Ryan Reeves. Okay, what are you going to bash someone's face in? What's Ryan Reeves going to do in the playoffs? You know what Ryan Reeves is going to do in the playoffs? You know what he's going to do, guys? He's going to be in the press box. He's not playing. He's not going to play. No one's fighting in the playoffs, man. They're going to look at him like, dude, get off of me. Like, so I think that those are kind of like the bigger moves, that they made. Yeah. What was the goalie that they brought in there late too? It was Martin Jones. Like, okay, like that's your backup or third guy.
Maybe
fine.
the starter.
But like Samsonov, fine goalie, but still young. These Russian goalies, man. If we ever had a best on best tournament now, I mean, I'm in Canada. We got no goalies, right? But Russia has like 5 that are like incredible, right? So I think Toronto will be at the top of that division. And then obviously losing the first round, probably to Detroit. And so I don't know. Awesome. I don't think they're built. I don't think they're built properly, either. You say 64% of the cap with 3 or 4 guys. That is, it's not a recipe for success. I mean, they had to give Matthews that contract.
Yep.
They had to, and he was going to get paid, but now it's just okay. Well, your window's closing. In my opinion, it's like almost kind of closed. In my opinion, getting worse every year.
Yep.
Because they bring up a guy like Matthew Nyes, and to me, he's their only prospect. Like that's the only guy they're bringing up. If you go look at their prospect pool, like tell me you'd recognize any of these names, right? So I don't think they really even have the juice in terms of draft picks, prospects to go and get the next, O'Reilly, right,
Yep.
at the deadline. Like, how are you going to manage this, right? You don't number one don't have this cap space. You don't have the assets to move, right? And the cupboard is going to dry up at one point.
Yep.
Right. And then you're going to turn into the Wings of 2015, where it's like, oh, crap. Now we got all these bad contracts and we can't do anything about it. We're going to sign all these veterans to try to keep it going. I don't know. I think there's still going to be a very, very good regular season team, though.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think it's the perfect opportunity for Bert to go be full pigeon. I don't think Bert ever created any of his own offensive opportunities, really. You can find your highlights. You can find highlights of anyone out there. But, man, if you start putting him around some, Mitch Marner, Nylander type people, they're going to find him. He's going to put the puck in the net just like he did when he went to a powerhouse in Boston.
So that's going to wrap up the Eastern Conference predictions. Buschy, thank you so much for coming on the channel. Absolute pleasure. Great discussion. Would love to have you on again soon. And we will have you on again soon because we actually recorded way too long of a video. And so we have another video that we're going to post with you in a few days or so doing some award predictions.
That's what happens when you have a lot of fun with the boys. So I'm sorry that I made us go way too long, but I had a lot of fun, guys. So definitely would love to come back.
Well, you kind of are coming back in a few days because, like I said, we actually recorded beyond what you're seeing right now, and we're going to post that as well in a couple days. So we'll see that as well. What were you going to say, Billy?
Let's say I'm the Rambler. We can't keep bringing on Ramblers.
All right.
That's what I
don't
do.
forget to throw a comment down there if you have any predictions that you want to leave for the Eastern Conference. Or the West, or whatever predictions you want to throw them on down there. We'll be happy to reply and give our thoughts. And then stay tuned. In a couple days, we'll get another video out with us and Buschy regarding predictions for NHL awards. So if you haven't already, head on down to the info section, the description, and hit the subscribe button on Healthy Scratch, Red Wings Report. Go check out the channel. It's a great channel. Clearly has some excellent takes because they align so much with what we say. So obviously we like them. So go over there, hit the sub button, see more of Buschy, and hopefully we have you more here, and we'd love to go over there as well. So it was a pleasure.
It's gonna happen. No, thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Buschy.